Hey guys, welcome to this new tutorial on the LF1. I'm gonna do this video to show a little bit of extra detail and extra work on the bits of geometry that are missing in order to just end up doing having enough material to actually do a good section through this building. And also replying to some of the emails asking how to do this volume over here, right? So let's start by going into our front view, this one, and basically this is the information that we need for that other view, right? So what we could actually do is just get rid of these surfaces right now, get rid of some of the material that we're not going to be working with. So floors, columns, all this stuff could actually disappear for now, and we actually we'll probably be working with a new layer, section lines 2, right? So let's first of all switch this, because we want to work with this one, right? Switch the view to the back view, right? We're in front, let's look it from the back, and you can see now that not only we're looking at the model from the back, but the image has been flipped as well. So this image right now is useless for us. What I'm gonna do is just do a rectangle here. That's quite precise. So I'm gonna mark where the image is, right, just to have the scale right. And I'm gonna reload the bitmap with the same bitmap, but in this case it will be the other direction, right? So I'm going to navigate into my elevation view, and now I can snap over those corners, and you can see that I flipped this stuff around, right? Also the layer windows could be turned off, and I think we have some lines that are hidden, so let's use section lines and plan lines and show, and yep, we have plenty of lines here. So what we need to do is move this kind of back view to the place where we have our model. So I'm gonna click it here, and without snapping really, because that's kind of working. We could move it slightly down if we want. That seems to be a good reference, right? So as I said, we're going to do another set of lines called section lines 2, and I'm going to just do this one in a greenish color. Section lines should also be green, perhaps, to distinguish it from the plan lines, right? So let's go ahead and let's draw a little bit of what we are going to be doing, right? We are going to be working with this volume here, and it's perhaps difficult to understand, but if you look at the pictures, right, if we look at the pictures, we can see that the volume is quite low, and this is kind of a big kind of cut on the facade, that where the excess happens, right? So this is a pretty interesting facade to work on, and we're going to be working first in this volume here, and then we're going to detail this one. We're going to draw the whole thing and then trim it as we have been doing before. So let's go ahead and do that. This would be like a good detail, especially this volume is quite interesting because this one actually goes inside and it has all the connection with the stair and everything inside. All the interesting bit of the project happens in this area. So let's go ahead and just mark the volume. The volume is this one here. This is part, what you can see, this line is part of the cut on the facade, right? So I'm gonna just do a line here, it's a curve. And this line, we'll see that it's just going to be a reference for us. because this volume has certain peculiarities. So let's say that's gonna be the volume, right? And if we go to the top view and turn on our bitmap, now we can go into plan view and also draw this volume as it's supposed to be in the plan. And you can see right away that when we start doing that, we start encountering in the plan view already some dotted lines. And these dotted lines are quite interesting because they represent that this volume is tapered. It basically it's growing and it's becoming bigger as it moves up, right? So that's something that we need to take in consideration. We cannot just extrude this up, this line, right? So let's look at our 3D to understand what I'm saying. Sorry. So I cannot really extrude this volume straight up because it's kind of this rectangle we can get rid of. Because we should expand the volume. Let's see the image again, and you'll see that the volume is kind of being expanded, right? So let's see how to deal with that problem. We could measure already the height of our volume, right? So we could say distance, and just if we measure kind of roughly, we could say 2.5, and then we could measure it. Actually, this should be the ground here, right? So we could say that 1.5. And you can, well, yeah. Let's do it with this 0 considered here. Actually, we could see that in this side we have the floor with a small slope, so that's something to take in consideration as well. So we have let's say 2.5 and 1.5. Let's just work with that. So what I'm gonna do is just pick this line, that is the line of the new volume that we've been working on, and I'm gonna just copy vertical, and I'm gonna do 2.5. And this will now become part of a section line, right? Because it's not in the plan. So what we could do now is just basically turn this off, and this line we could actually emulate, like basically the bring the points down. We know that this point needs to be at a distance of 1.5, right? And that this point needs to be here. I'm not gonna snap to anything because I want to maintain the location of the points in the plan, right? So I don't want to snap to anything really. So that's kind of good. If we look at this now, it seems a little bit strange, this last point, right? So we could work with that. And it seems that our plan, it's not completely coordinated with our elevation, right? So let's just leave it like that, and we'll deal with that later. But it's fine, right? So we have this curve that it's going down, and in this case we're not gonna just extrude and trim with this curve, but we're gonna use this curve exactly as a lofting curve, right? So I want to just make sure that this line it's in the right position, right? So I'm gonna just move these control points to put them in the location of this dotted lines, right, to follow slightly a different curve, right? So we can see that those two curves are not the same. At the same time, we're going to just do a new volume here called volume 4, right? And let's work on that one to just do a loft between this element and this element. I'm going to just click OK, and I'm going to evaluate a little bit what we have, right? We have this volume here. It seems that the line that we're following should be a little bit slightly longer in this point, right? So we can go and change that. So let's pick that line. I'm just pressing Alt and Shift to move it orthogonal, but not snapping to anything, so I don't change it from the plane in which it's sitting. So that's looking good, I think. And again, maybe the same situation with this curve on the top. I'm gonna move it slightly to this point here, and this is like how much detail, how much accuracy you want to work with for this drawing, right? So it's up to you. I'm just gonna show you the tools to go through, and obviously you will be able to spend more time in some of those drawings. So that's looking pretty good. Let's also start looking at the trim that we have to do, right? So if we again do wireframe here, we could go back to our section lines layer and trim this geometry, right? It's important that we understand the project here, because again, this geometry, it's a diagonal, so we're kind of seeing a perspectival view. In this case, we're not seeing any other model, so I'm going to just do this line here like that. I'm going to copy that, and we could think that it's this one, but it's actually this one, right? Because this is the one that is actually cutting, and this is a perspectival view of that model. So that's good. At this point we could already trim this guy. So let's say cutting objects, these two, and we cut that one, right? This curve, we could get rid of the original one, this one, right? Because now this one is the one that we care about. I want to be able to make a copy of this one, so I'm going to just press Ctrl C and Ctrl V, because one version of it, so now you can see I have two, right? So I'm going to pass one to our extras layer. I think that that's where we're kind of saving material that we might need to use later. So I'm going to just trim this curve, trim cutting objects, these two, and trim this curve here, right? Actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. What we want to do is just first project this curve into the background, because what we need to do is just start building this geometry connected to volume 1, right? How do we kind of build the geometry between here and here being accurate, right? So first thing I'm gonna do in plan lines, I will start working on this entry. And it seems that we're kind of a bit off here in the positioning of this drawing, right? So I guess we'll have to deal with that in some way. Okay, let's just go ahead. So I'm gonna do is just basically do a line like this one, showing this angle, right, without snapping anything. Just want to make sure that it's kind of parallel to that line. And I'm gonna move it and place it here. And let's check that on the perspective to see that. So this is the entry point, right? I'm gonna make a copy of that, pressing C, enter, for this one, knowing that this is parallel, right? And that's looking okay. We could also do is just pick these two, copy them again, and paste them on the top here. But in this case, this one doesn't match, right? So we need to just move it again. So now we have some of the lines to actually build this geometry. Let's go ahead and do loft. So this one, just because it's up, I'm going to put it in the section lines, right? And as we've done before, we can trim using this as a cutting object, right click and cut the excess out, right? So what I need to do is just project this line into the background and then be able to close this polygon here, right? So for doing that, I'm just going to isolate those two elements by pressing I, enter, H, enter. That's kind of the shortcut, or invert selection and hide. And here I'm going to type project. Select the curves to project this one, right click, enter. And we have projected the curve to the geometry, right? Let's put that curve again in the section lines. If we show again our model, what we need right now is just somehow to trim this curve with this curve here. But we don't have that curve as a curve, we have it as a surface, right? So let's do extract wireframe, control click on the line that we want to maintain and delete. So now we have again this curve. I should remember that to switch to my section lines. And now basically we need to just extend a bit the line. I'm gonna isolate those two elements. Again, if you didn't see what I did, just is pick this line, isolate and hide. And at this point we're not really working with the image anymore. And I just need to provide some boundary for this extension. Extend, select the boundary, right click. In this case, because they're not parallel, we need to project the line, select cutting objects, so that's perfect. So we see that now we have this curve, that it's on the surface and it's trimmed exactly to our, well, it's actually not really trimmed there. Let's see what we can do about that. We could get rid of this curve here. Right, so gonna redo that surface with the one that it's actually touching our new curve, right? We're getting a little bit inaccurate there. That's not good. So let's do again. I'm gonna just repeat this process because I wanna clean the result, right? So I'm gonna do it slightly different. I'm gonna pick this line and this line, invert selection, sorry, and project it again, just to make sure that it's completely on surface, right? So project, select the curve, right click, surface, right click. So we have this new curve. It seems to be the same thing, right? And this line is the one that I'm gonna get rid of, and then this one is gonna be connected to the trimmed version of that. So I need this point, loft, here, there we go, loft, and there we go. We change the layers, but it's important to make sure that we're kind of really working accurately. I think that that's a problem of visualization, but it's actually should be completely accurate in the sense that this line is perfectly projected on the surface, right? And as we've done before, the only missing bit for this volume here, well, this one as well, let's make sure that we have perpendicular on. So I can say loft, I'm pretty sure that this volume is not like this at the end. It has some diagonal, so just check that and do it properly if you want. Again, this line must be important just to do what we're usually doing. That is, we want to do the trimming, the detail of the roof. So I'm gonna isolate this element. Now we can look at it from the top, so it's very simple. So what we want to do, as we've been doing before, is just offset some of these curves at 0.24. This curve, yes. This one as well. And this one. Right, this one we probably need to extend it slightly. So we could do just that and trim this one, and that one, and then clean them around like that. So that's good. Now when we're done, we can pick them again and join them, pressing J, enter. So now we can go ahead and split the geometry, select object to split this one, right click, and the curve. So now we have the geometry in two pieces, right? I'm gonna move this vertical. I'm gonna click anywhere and say null point 15. Oops, again, minus null point 15. There we go. And then loft the the kind of the inner edges. Right, so very straightforward. It's the same process. In this case, instead of just like extruding the volume and trimming it, we just basically use the curves from the top and the bottom to just produce the geometry, right? So I think that's looking pretty good. If you look at some of the images, we have certain inaccuracies in the terms of, I believe that it's the plants that are having some issues as well. They're not matching. That could be the case, or we could check if we have any error somewhere. But in general, the way of modeling this is actually working pretty well. I will do the next one in the next video, and then we will be in a position to start doing some sections and some drawings with a little bit more information than what we have so far, right? So our last thing, I'm just gonna add a new layer here called roofs. That it's gonna be dark but not so dark, right? So just to put some of these elements in a different layer. So you can see a bit more contrast there, and it's looking pretty good. So that's it for this video. See you guys soon.